to Resonance, podcast by Quetzal y Andrade, talking about bass, effects, and live things. That intro song is called Evergreen. It's track 2 on my second album, Evergreen, and it's a fun piece to play. It's a fun piece for me to listen to. It definitely reminds me of my wife. I expressed that to her as well, how I really feel that the liveliness, the bounciness, the joy that this song brings, it definitely reflects her eyes, her smile that is constant regardless of the season, summer, winter, rain or shine. She's evergreen. And before I continue on this sappy road that y'all may not want to hear, just want to thank you for coming out and listening to episode number 5. Thank you for tuning in, checking out episode number 5 in my podcast. It will be talking about Evergreen, the second album that I came up with this year, 2025, and just want to express gratitude to those that, we're listening to the album since then, right? So way back since January, February of this year. And recently my 13th album just got released, December 1st. I want to thank you all for checking that out and just seeing some of the, I don't want to say growth, because I don't want to imply that it's better or significantly different, but there's definitely newness to it, right? There's definitely something different, where I started off on the 6-string bass, just doing the first 6 albums only on bass. And then by album 13, I'm actually doing all the bass lines with just the P bass, except for one track. And that was something different. I wanted to explore that. I really wanted to provide some newness and a challenge for me, since the P bass is not something that I particularly spend much time with. I'm used to playing 6 strings, and at that, my short scale 32-inch scale bass, as opposed to the standard 34 on a Fender P bass, where the string spacing is also all the more wide, right? 19 millimeter string spacing, as opposed to my current S. Martin bass that is 17 millimeter string spacing. So enough of on the details of bass specs. I do want to talk about the album, some of the tracks, some of the effects, and just even sample some of the songs so that you can hear what it is I'm thinking and feeling as far as like how to fill the space, right, with just the bass. Granted, a 6-string bass can provide a significant amount of range, but even so, I still wanted the pieces to sound full, and even some elements of percussion without there actually being any actual drums in the mix, provided by the actual bass through effects, etc. So here's the first track on the second album called Strobe. Let's check that out. All right, so as you can hear, there's this pad or drone in the background, which I used to have a freeze pedal by Electro Harmonics, and I ended up removing that pedal just because it was like, to me, a one-trick pony that I couldn't justify on my pedal board. I do now have a slower stereo reverb pedal that allows me to freeze a drone note, right? Some sort of padding, in similar fashion as this track displays. However, in this track, I actually did that with an iPad. Full disclosure, that pad sound is just a drone on an iPad, some app that I have, just for the sake of not pulling out a freeze pedal, and because I didn't have my current stereo slower reverb pedal, right? But other than that, the idea is there of just some drone being held out and then composing or recording on top of that. You hear this OC2-ish kind of sound, which is a preset that I created in my Ampero 2 by Hot Tone. That's where the lower octave bass line is, or how it's created. And then I have a muted little like guitars type of chicken picking thing going on for rhythm, and even some backbeat stuff with a bit crusher, right? Just because of the sharpness of it that it provides. I use that a lot of times in the first 6 albums as a backbeat, which I dig. I dig the sound. I like the kind of like sharpness to it, but also an element of like digitalness, right? I don't want to just say video gaming, the association with like Bit Crusher and video games and all that, sample rate reduction, etc. But to me, it can be a very percussive tool, even just for some sort of backbeat purposes, although I like using it for some melodies and other rhythmic things. The melody on top, just reverb, right, and the bass. And it's called strobe because I felt like this presented some sort of image of lights just flashing and rotating, sort of like a dark room, right? Maybe you're thinking like a club or rave, club or rave scene, but more than that, it's like it's a silent space at the time, and the lights are doing all the work, all the dancing. They can be as loud as they can be, but they're not really providing any sort of audible, aural, discernible sound. And so I feel like, even though, yes, there's music and there's melodies and there's harmonic accompaniment, and there's a bass line, and as electronic-y as some of it may sound, it's not a super sonically driven piece where it's slamming and, fists are in the air and that kind of like that vibe, right? But however, when we do play this piece live with a trio, with a drummer, it's a whole nother vibe, right? It's a whole nother level. I feel like, yeah, then you really do feel the energy. It does make me want to headbang a little more. And so that's Strobe, right? The first track, followed by Evergreen, which is number 2, right? That's the intro piece we heard at the beginning. One new thing. And now I'm saying all these things right after the fact, saying, oh, the first 6 albums are nothing but bass. Lies, right? One new thing has one new thing. And it's the only track that I've included with cajon, right? There's a little cajon pattern that I decided, I don't want to do that muted type of rhythmic accompaniment on the bass. And so I decided to just play a hand percussion instrument called the cajon. And it's subtle, but I felt like it's just something there to throw in and say that I added some new things. So here's one new thing, and let's give it a spin. Excuse me, that's Evergreen. Got some tremolo going on those chords. OC2 sound coming in. Some variation in the melody with some triplets and straight eighth notes. Some chromaticism going on, which I wouldn't say it's a forte of mine, but I wanted to push myself on this track, adding some chromaticism and some interesting interval jumps right within the melody. So that's almost a whole minute, but it's one new thing, right? That's that track, followed by track number 4. And this is Arrive, and this has to be like one of my favorite pieces to play live. I'm probably going to say that way too often, right? This is one of my favorite pieces, but I really do enjoy playing Arrive. I feel like the title implies that, like, when you arrive somewhere, I think you can't help but feel like, okay, a box was checked off. You feel accomplished. There might be some sort of satisfaction, even if you're kind of dreading the destination, right? You just know it's somewhere you have to be and that's already a win, right? So Arrive, it does sound more on the positive side of things, but really dig this intro that I do with a bit crusher, right, with the Auto Bit Junior. And that's the loop, right, that I create, and I just build on top of that the rest of the way. So let's listen to that real quick. So obviously you hear some OC2 bass line again, really into that, especially in the first 6 albums, especially first two albums. But yeah, I just wanted to create some distinction between the dry bass and then obviously a bass part and then harmonic accompaniment, and not to mention the loop. You can hear on top of the melody that it's trailing with some granular delay, and that's actually with my Walrus Audio Fable pedal. Really dig that granular delay sound, and I feel like that pedal in particular provides it in a way that it's not too much. Yes, you can tweak it to be pretty out there, right? Pretty present and aggressive, but I feel like it's almost like a substitute for a reverb trail or some sort of delay, regular delay, right? And so there it is, Arrive, right? There you have the main vibe and sound. The next piece I really dig, and the reason why is because I end up using my Chase Bliss Mood pedal, right? The first generation, which my wife gave to me, and so that's a sentimental piece that I enjoy using. It's like I could really just play with that one pedal hours on end and be completely fine, but I try to use it, it's not sparingly, but in a manner that it's like, okay, it's not just overkill. I'm not just using that on every track. Although, even just on a reverb using basses, I could use that as my number one reverb. And I would say for half the tracks on each album, that's probably the reverb I use the most, or it's half the reverb option that I use. But here's the clock. I really feel like this is just kind of encompassing the idea of time and how precious it is, right? I hope you get that vibe from listening to it. I'll just sample a little bit of the beginning, but this is with the Chase Bliss Mood pedal. Got some micro looping in there. Along with the Autobit Junior sequencer shutter aspect. The clock, and I feel like that repetitive loop, right, especially because of the Autobit Junior, right, the way that shutter effect works, it's kind of like an alarm clock, and so with that, you're kind of getting this idea of a clock and alarm time, and so that's why I called it the clock. I didn't want to call it the alarm. That sounds alarming, right? Sounds perhaps annoying and or dreadful, right? And something you don't really want to, nobody wants to look forward to their alarm, really, when you're screaming for an extra 5 minutes of sleep. But the clock definitely, it has this warmer, darker, slower, bigger picture life type of idea going on somewhere in there. And I'm thinking, when I listened to it, when I wrote it, time, how quickly time is going by, and the fact that my beautiful kids are growing up so fast. The clock is not slowing down for them at all, and the moments are precious, right? And the clock is ticking, and so this is kind of like a piece that I hope that at some point I can talk to my kids about, and hopefully they'll listen to this podcast at some point, and or other ways, me in the flesh communicating to them, or some other exclusive audio recordings for just their ears only, perhaps talking about this piece and how every minute with them is priceless, right? And they are priceless to me. And yeah, the clock. So it's a soft piece, or softer piece in the whole album, but I needed to get that out of my system somehow. I just enjoyed that loop very much. Next piece is called Raindrops. My oldest son, Mateo, he's 9 years old now. He really loved this track for a very long time. I would say it was his favorite for a long time. So here's Raindrops. Big Crusher intro with some reverb and granular delay on the Fable. OC2 bass line. Besides the main melody being played up, in the higher register with reverb, I have some long notes playing in the background that's actually being played through the Milli pedal, right, by Walrus Audio. I can't remember which color setting is on there for this, but that's where you're getting some of the longer drone notes. So that's Raindrops. Yeah, it just gave me some sort of rainy day vibes, and maybe because of the whole like granular delay, repetitive rhythmic nature. Next piece is called Rushing Wind, which kind of seems energetic, fast paced, and hence the title. I love this bass line. Granular delay with a Fable pedal, but with a lot of stuff turned up to get that whole extended wet trail of chords, right? So with the melody, I'm using an octave pedal with the Electro-Harmonix pedal that I have on my main shortboard. But then what's really cool, and like I said, I love that bass line. The bass line's actually played with some sort of synth preset. I don't even know how much I really tweaked it or not, in the Zoom 6dB. And so that one is so cool to me. I really dig that sound. I like it for some lead stuff, but it sounds awesome to me on some bass line type of material as well. So that's Rushing Wind. Next piece is called La Tierra, and I'm still getting over this congestion, so I'll apologize with my voice cracking here and there, and having to clear my throat. But La Tierra, it's a simple melody that's introduced at the beginning and at the end, and then it's all solo in between. It's all just improv, no script, and it's just, I felt it was very appropriate with the idea that La Tierra means the land, and the earth. It's so different everywhere you go, right? We can never fully understand it, I think. Just once you get a feel for a place, the land changes, and maybe that's indicated with the music too, right? Where the melodic ideas change or turn, and it with the the constant rhythm underneath. I feel it's almost an endless type of sound, like the earth. We can't see the edges, if you will, or where the earth really curves, right? But it's such a vast place, and it's almost like limitless. And so musically speaking, I feel like it was an appropriate way to say or to reflect me playing with no script. Like, hey, there's so many choices. This could go anywhere. And these are the notes that I happen to choose at this given time. So here's La Tierra. I'll just play the intro in the first 30 seconds or so. that or the Millie pedal, Walrus Audio. Yeah, so I just take off and don't revisit the melody until the very end. So La Tierra, I have a blast listening to that one. On occasion, I feel like inspires me to do like a million takes of that solo over again and see if it comes out nearly as iconic to me. I feel like I recognize the solo very well, and but that's the thing. Like even though soloing isn't a huge focus on a lot of these songs for me, as much as I try to integrate it, periodically enough. All these tracks are done basically one take at a time. There's no punching in and all that. So when I hear the melody, to me it's like, when I hear the solo, this is one of the more extensive ones. And so to me, I'm just happy that I know that it's not cut and paste, whether somebody believes that or not. To me, it's one of those things where, the truth matters to me most. And I don't know how many takes I did in order to keep that solo or that whole run through with the melody and the solo. But I'm glad I kept that one. I really feel happy with where that solo went. And I don't think I would attempt to do something better. I'm just curious as to how another take would actually sound, right? Would I follow the same kind of contour lines, same licks, or would the end product sound just completely different? Who knows, right? Like the Earth, right? It's ever different on differing sides of the globe, right? So, La Tierra, let's move on from there to the last track called Por Último. Por Último is actually like for last, or basically in saying in English, lastly kind of thing. Por último, lastly, or finally, or for the end. I'm trying to translate this appropriately. And so this is the last track, right? It's kind of redundant in that manner, but I hope you like it. Have some tremolo again for time, going with the Walrus Audio Fable pedal for the granular delay. Some OC2 bass line, dry reverb bass on top. Changes here. Yeah, so common thread through the 6 albums, or the first 6 albums, is just having some sort of loop start every song, every track, and then building upon it. And for me, it's just a great way to start a song, right? And then say, let's see what happens. Let me add something and see where that takes me next. Either adding chords or a bass line first, after the loop, and then, or secondly, right? And then finally the melody at the end, after hearing where the chord progressions are leading, right, or headed. And so, this is the second album, Evergreen. I had a blast recording it and trying to figure out what to do for an album cover. It just kind of was like, well, let me take a picture of my gear again and throw something on top. So in that regard, it's not all that creative, but I feel like the cover is reflective of the title in some sort of manner. Eventually, I'll just keep using some of my kids' artwork, as you see in some of the other albums as well that follow, right? I end up using, especially my daughter's my daughter's artwork as album covers. Sometimes I'll change some of the color or the tint, but a lot of it is her, right? That I try to integrate. Thank you for listening to episode number 5. And yes, it was focused on Evergreen, but before punching out, I actually want to talk probably for like the next 5 minutes on the events of this past weekend and how music is it's ever changing, whether we like it or not, depending who we're playing, depending on the audience, right? The audience can generate a different kind of energy from night to night, depending on the response. And then even ourselves, right? Mentally, emotionally, physically, how we are entering that gig. And it's been a crazy week, right? Thanksgiving week with Friendsgiving events, and then, just juggling the family. My kids did a turkey trot walk or run type of thing, and so that was a crazy morning for us. But on on Saturday, I wanted to use my HX1 pedal for the first time, and I wanted to use this dual pitch preset that I worked on. And in the studio or at home, it worked well, right? I thought it was cool. I thought I had it dialed in, but I hadn't touched it in a couple days because family, life, didn't have time. And I was like, oh great, I gotta start packing up for this gig pretty soon. But let me just double check this thing because I've never used it before live, and I want to make sure that it's not gonna act crazy hot or be super crazy low in the mix once I trigger that pedal on or that effect. So, I turned on my app, I tested it out, and sure enough, some of the mix was a little bit off, as well as the overall output. So I made some changes, and then finally, to me, it sounded like, okay, this should work. This is a better presentation of this effect, and it should come out appropriately, right? Not too crazy loud, not soft, well balanced, in my opinion. So we end up doing the gig that night, and finally, the one particular song where I felt I was gonna use this effect for the first time comes up, and so then I kick on the effect, and it sounded great, right? I don't know if you guys were anticipating. Oh shoot, utter chaos. Sorry to disappoint, but long story is, it pays off to tweak your stuff, and maybe more than once, right? Kind of set something up, and in the moment your ears may say, this sounds great. You walk away, come back to it, and then wow, a second review, right? A second opinion comes into play, and then you start tweaking a little more, and then yet again, maybe a third time it just doesn't, maybe a second tweak is not enough, right? Maybe after a live use you say, you know what, after further review it does need to be dialed back or pushed a little more, or EQing and or whatever balance mix within the effect needs to happen, right, further. But I was super happy that I took the time to not assume, right, that the effect was just going to come through as I initially thought it would come out great. And so it paid off. I played it, and I was trying to be like, oh, it sounds great, and I'm so proud of myself. It was just like I was happy that I took the time. I definitely dwelled on that gratitude or that piece of appreciation for a second on stage before just, okay, let me focus on the solo. Let me just play what I feel. So again, thank you for listening to episode number 5. Don't be scared to use effects when appropriate, or even maybe not appropriate, right? Take those risks, have some fun, and then find some awesome discoveries, right, for your instrument. Sometimes the effects that we use time and time again, can sound a little bit stale. Try something new, right? Don't be scared to venture out, not just on another pedal, but maybe whatever settings you usually use on that one pedal. And that being said, I tend to use a lot of the presets and effects pedals usually in the same fashion, but I took a risk this past Saturday, and it's okay, right? I encourage you to obviously troubleshoot at home if and when possible, and then just hopefully on the actual gig you can go ahead and integrate that effect without any sort of real backlash and or disdain for your creativity, right? Don't stop being creative or innovative. even if something fails, right? Even if something flops, I know that I've tried that before. Some sort of effect or combination of effects that maybe I usually wouldn't do, and sometimes it flops a little bit, right? It doesn't hit as great as you thought it would, but sometimes you just never know if you didn't take the risk, whether at home in the studio or live on stage, given an appropriate time. And I think you can definitely count your blessings if you play with musicians and or friends, a band or artist that is willing to give you grace, right? Willing to give you the opportunity to be yourself, right? Express yourself, even if it's not something that is perhaps initially successful or does not hit in the best way possible at the moment, right? If you're playing with a group or band that is still going to love you and have you on the next gig, regardless of a risk that you took, I think you can count that as a great asset, a great way to continue respecting that band and artist for their respect for you, right? The grace that they give you for allowing you to experiment for here and there and trying to keep pushing the music further and further into new uncharted territory. So again, don't be scared to try new effects. And I hope that this podcast was insightful on the Evergreen album, as well as some sort of word of encouragement for further effects exploration in your pertaining instrument or on your pertaining instrument, bass or not. We'll see you next time. Have a great one, and I'll see you on episode number 6.